Too early.
Way overwhelming.
I'm going to show you guys one thing real quick before we go in, right? Look at this. Okay.
Let me get my hand out.
What does she have in her hand?
What am I holding in my hand here? Caterpillar. And why is a caterpillar bad?
He makes a hole.
Because this is what he does, right? So when you see a caterpillar like this in your garden, what do you need to do?
Take it out.
Take him out. He is no good. Right, because this is what he does to your plants, and it's no good.
Can you show the eggs?
Yeah, some of the stuff on the back here, like that looks like a caterpillar egg, that looks like an egg. Sometimes on the backs of the leaves you might see eggs, right? Yes. Okay, so my name's Adrienne.
And I'm Shannon.
We're from Green City Growers, and this is a lesson that we just completed with the 5th graders at a charter school in Cambridge. And we're going to do it again.
Yeah,
we're going to go through it right now and do it again.
So the point of the lesson was to teach the kids about food systems and where their food comes from, because it comes from all over the world, and try to put that in perspective for them to understand where their banana comes that they have with breakfast, or where their apple comes when you go to bring it for lunch. So what we did was we made a kind of a flow chart for them, and we'll show you how we put it together.
The first thing we did was start to ask them, what are some things that grow here in Massachusetts? And they were able to answer that question because they're growing their own garden outside of their school. So, you know, they said things like spinach and lettuce and kale, tomatoes, things that they know from experience grow here in Massachusetts. Then we sort of held up our fruits. We brought these fruits in, and we showed them different types of fruits and asked them where they came from. We said, do we grow bananas in Massachusetts? No, right? We've never seen a banana tree here. So where do these grow? Well, these say they come from Guatemala. And we had a map of the world, and we put the fruit on where it came from. So bananas come from Guatemala.
And then we had an orange, which is grown many places, but this one specifically came from South Africa. So we were able to kind of spread out across the map some different fruits and vegetables so that they could see the distance that the food really traveled.
This one is a mango, which came from Brazil, South America. A lot of our fruits came from South America or Central America. So then we put this one on the map, Brazil, mango.
And then we had a coconut that came from the Dominican Republic, and a lime that came from Mexico. And then we had an apple.
The final thing we showed them was this apple, which we asked, well, where do apples grow? And they said, all over the place, which is true. This apple I picked it a couple weeks ago in an orchard in Massachusetts, in Amesbury, Massachusetts. So this is a local apple, right? We talked about what that means. We put this on the map on Massachusetts. So we can see that we have all of these fruits and citrus things that come from tropical climates. The 5th graders talked about tropical versus temperate climates, and why we can grow these fruits and citrus is in tropical climates, and then there are only some things that we can grow here in our New England climate.
So we left with the apple, and we took that into making the flowchart, and we went through the whole conventional food system for apples. And what we described the conventional food system as a system that brings food from all over the world, and it is broken down into a lot of different steps. So we kind of laid that out in pictures. So the first step would be growing the apples. And you can see here, it's just, the kids were very excited to put up the squares. That was the main attraction. So we had growing, and then the next step was harvesting the apples. And then after harvesting, they needed to be processed. And what we explained was that most of these fruits, since they're picked in a place very far away from where they're consumed, they need to be preserved and often picked before they're ripe. So they use a whole host of chemicals and preservatives to keep them fresh, or what they describe as fresh and ripe, and looking like they would, the consumer would want. And so they process them, and then we have, they put them in storage containers, big boxes, so that they can be then transported.
And we talked about the time frame, how much this takes. I mean, if an apple is growing and harvested before it's even ready, before it's even ripe, and then treated with chemicals, preservatives in order to prolong its life, right? Then it goes to storage. This all is taking quite a long time. The next step is that it goes in a truck, right? And it goes across the country, across multiple countries. It's shipped for a very long time, right? And so through all of these processes, this apple has to stay fresh. So they use these preservatives to keep it fresh, and it's not even ripe sometimes when they take it off the tree. It ripens in transit, right? So we talk to the kids about how, well, when you get to, your Stop and Shop or your local grocery store and you look at all the produce, it looks good. But often you realize that that produce has been off the tree, off the vine, not living for a long time.
Right. And it's manipulated by the different chemicals
Right,
to make it look like really fresh and really, really
beautiful.
natural. And
but as one of the
beautiful.
kids pointed out to us, it doesn't have a lot of nutrients, right? Because if it's gone through all of these steps thus far, and we still have a few more steps to go, since it got picked from the tree, it's lost some of its nutrition.
I think one kid actually gave an actual percentage of 30 to 50% of the nutrients are lost via this whole process of transporting and everything, which is
They're doing
very
their
impressive
research.
that they held on to that information.
So the next step is the warehouse, right? So after being transported across the country, say from, in the case of avocado, if an avocado maybe was grown in Southern California, and it was transported to Massachusetts, that's all the way across the country. And then it goes to a warehouse. It doesn't go directly to the supermarket. So then it sits in these big warehouses is another process, another step, right? That's where it sits until...
Then this comes a step where it starts to become a little bit more familiar to the consumers. It gets bought by your local food store, maybe Stop and Shop, Shaw's, something that's very familiar to the consumer. So that then has to be shipped again to this store.
From the warehouse to the store.
Right.
Then the next step is that the consumer, with their shopping cart, will go to the store and buy the food, right? That's the most familiar step to us. As children, we grow up and we learn what grocery shopping is and where food comes from. That's where we, where we think it comes from. For me as a kid, and I'm sure for some kids, for a long time, you assume that food comes right from the grocery store. And you don't realize that there's all these steps to get it there.
Or commonly people think of just these two steps, going right from the farm to
the store. And they don't realize all of what's involved in between. The final step is that it goes to the home of the consumer. And is eaten for breakfast, lunch, a snack, what have you. So this is 9 steps, and we talked to the kids and we showed them how this is a long process, right? This could take weeks, this could take a really long time. So the idea that the produce, when it gets to the store and then you bring it home, and probably when you bring it home, sometimes you put it in your fridge and don't even eat it for a few more days, right? That's not really a fresh product. It's not fresh produce, So this is what's known as a conventional food system as opposed to a local food system, and it's wasteful.
Right. And another thing is, along these steps you see a lot of environmental impacts, and I think that a lot of kids pick that up because they see the chemicals, and we've talked to them a lot about how chemicals are bad for the environment, and then you see just all this transport and all of this distribution as kind of just, a waste. And a lot of kids saw the value of skipping all these steps, which is really cool.
And the kids asked also about, well, maybe not just trucks, like do they ever ship it in planes or do they ship it in boats? And we said, yeah, of course, things are shipped all over the world in different ways. And there's a lot of gas, energy expended there, right? It's a tremendous industry. And these trucks, in addition, these trucks have to be temperature controlled. They're refrigerated trucks in order that the stuff stays fresh, right? So there's an extreme amount of energy being wasted here. And I think the kids understood by seeing all these individual steps exactly how much of a waste it is and how much of a process it is.
So it was not only the environmental impact that they picked up on, but they also picked up on the fact that throughout these steps there's a loss of money, and you're having to pay the truck company, you're having to pay
the warehouse
you're having to pay for the gas to get to the store. And so with that, the farmer who's back wherever
all the way
he
back
is,
here in whatever country,
right, that farmer loses their share of the money that they worked really hard for.
because there's so many steps involved, right?
So then we took all of this off, just kind of relieving, and just replaced it with one extra step to get to the home. So we have
So then
growing.
we told them that this is what it looks like in a local food system.
Right. So we went from growing, harvesting, right from harvesting to the consumer. So this is a farmer handing the consumer an apple. Or if you go apple picking, that's also another way you can eat local. And then the consumer drives home and eats the apple, or makes some apple pie, or the kids made applesauce.
Yeah, the kindergartners.
Yeah.
This could also represent a farmer's market, right? I mean, this is a representation of apples, but for vegetables, a lot of other products, the farmer will grow it, drive it a short distance to a city or to somewhere where there's a farmer's market. Then the consumer buys it directly from the farmer, handing the money directly to the farmer. There's no steps in between, right? And it ends up at the house. And since it's so local and fresh and was probably picked within a few days, you can know that there's a lot more nutrients in there. And it's a lot fresher and a lot less energy has been expended in getting it to you, the consumer.
So then we turn to the kids and we ask them what they do and how they participate in either of the systems. And they realize that a lot of what they're doing right now is the urban farming, and they're going out right outside their school to grow food. They harvest the food and then they take it inside and eat it. So it was very, very valuable for them to see that they're doing this and they're participating in the local food system. And also that they don't necessarily have to give up eating bananas. You know, it's not that black and white. They can definitely kind of just pick up when they're shopping and see, oh, this lime comes from Mexico, oh, but this one comes from closer to home. So maybe that will be a little bit less of environmental impact and a little less of a loss of nutrients and that kind of thing.
And just the idea that, especially in terms of apples, which as it's fall in New England are relevant, more relevant fruit that people are eating a lot, you know, you can think, well, you go to the store and you see these beautiful local apples from Vermont, and then you see these apples from Southern California or Mexico or South America, and you're like, well, which one should I choose? And I think the kids understood that in those types of situations you can make a choice to have more local food when you have a choice. And I think they really understood that, and we're pleased to know about it.
Yeah, definitely. So that was the lesson on food systems. That's it.
Bye.